just plugging the sound in, and we can see we've got our esteemed guest today. Okay, it's Canto 2, Chapter 7, Text 25. The chapter is the scheduled incarnations with specific functions. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 25. When Ravan was engaged in the battle, the tusks of the elephant which carried the king of heaven Indra broke into pieces, having collided with the chest of Ravan, and the scattered broken parts illuminated all directions. Ravan therefore felt proud of his prowess and began to loiter in the midst of the fighting soldiers, thinking himself the conqueror of all directions. But his laughter, overtaken by joy, along with his very air of life, suddenly ceased with the twanging sound of the bow of Ramachandra, the personality of Godhead. Purport. However powerful a living being may be, when he is condemned by God, no one can save him. And similarly, however weak one may be, if he is protected by the Lord, no one can annihilate him. We're just having technical difficulties. Text 26. Perfect.
Sorry.
Right.
When the world is overburdened by the fighting strength of kings who have no faith in God, the Lord, just to diminish the distress of the world, descends with his plenary portion. The Lord comes in his original form with beautiful black hair, and just to expand his transcendental glories, he acts extraordinarily. No one can properly estimate how great he is. Purport. This verse is especially describing the appearance of Lord Krishna and his immediate expansion, Lord Baladev. But Lord Krishna and Lord Baladev are one supreme personality of Godhead. The Lord is omnipotent, and he expands himself in innumerable forms and energies, and the whole unit is known as the one supreme Brahman. Such extensions of the Lord are divided into two divisions, namely personal and differential. The personal expansions are called the Vishnu Tattvas, and the differential expansions are called the Jiva Tattvas. And in such expansional activity, Lord Baladev is the first personal expansion of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Vishnu Purana, as well as in the Mahabharata,
In the Vishnu Purana, as well as in the Mahabharata, both Krishna and Baladev are mentioned as having beautiful black hair, even in their advanced stage. The Lord is called Anupalakshya Marga, or in still more technical Vedic terms, Avan Manasa Gochara, one who is never to be seen or realized by the limited sense perception of the people in general. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.25, it is said by the Lord, Naham Prakasha Sarvasya Yoga Maya Samavrita. In other words, he reserves the right of not being exposed to anyone and everyone. Only the bona fide devotees can know him by his specific symptoms, and out of many such symptoms, one symptom is mentioned here in this verse, that the Lord is Sita Krishna Kesha, the one who is observed always with beautiful black hair. That's so nice. Both Lord Krishna and Lord Baladev have such hair on their heads, and thus even in advanced age they appeared like young boys 16 years old. That is a particular symptom of the personality of Godhead. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that although he is the oldest personality among all living entities, he always looks like a new youthful boy. That is the characteristic of a spiritual body. The material body is symptomized by birth, death, old age, and diseases, but the spiritual body is conspicuous by the absence of those symptoms. Living entities who reside in the Vaikuntha Lokas in eternal life and bliss have the same type of spiritual body, without being affected by any signs of old age. It is described in the Bhagavatam, Canto 6, that the party of Vishnu Dutas who came to deliver Ajamel from the clutches of the party of Yamadutas
Party of Yamadutas.
Appeared like youthful boys, corroborating the description in this verse. It is ascertained thus that the spiritual bodies in the Vaikuntha lokas, either of the Lord or of the other inhabitants, are completely distinct from the material bodies of this world. Therefore, when the Lord descends from that world to this world, he descends in his spiritual body of Atma Maya, or internal potency, without any touch of the Bahiranga Maya, or external material energy. The allegation that the impersonal Brahman appears in this material world by accepting material body is quite absurd. Therefore, the Lord, when he comes here, has not a material body but a spiritual body. The impersonal Brahma Jyoti is only the glaring effulgence of the body of the Lord, and there is no difference in quality between the body of the Lord and the impersonal ray of the Lord, called Brahma Jyoti.
Now, the question is why the Lord, who is omnipotent, comes here to diminish the burden created upon the world by the unscrupulous kingly order. Certainly, the Lord does not need to come here personally for such purposes, but he actually descends to exhibit his transcendental activities in order to encourage his pure devotees who want to enjoy life by chanting the glories of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:13-14, it is stated that the Mahatmas, great devotees of the Lord, take pleasure in chanting of the activities of the Lord. All Vedic literatures are meant for turning one's attention towards the Lord and his transcendental activities. Thus, the activities of the Lord and his dealings with worldly people create a subject matter for discussion by his pure devotees.
Text 27. There is no doubt about Lord Krishna's being the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, how was it possible for him to kill a giant demon like Putana when he was just on the lap of his mother? To overturn a cart with his leg when he was only 3 months old? To uproot a pair of Arjuna trees so high that they touched the sky when he was only crawling? All these activities are impossible for anyone other than the Lord himself. Purport. One cannot manufacture a god by one's mental speculation or by numerical votes, as has become a practice for the less intelligent class of men. God is God eternally, and an ordinary living entity is eternally a part and parcel of God. God is one without a second, and the ordinary living entities are many without number. All such living entities are maintained by God himself, and that is the verdict of the Vedic literatures. When Krishna was on the lap of his mother, the demon Putana appeared before his mother and prayed to nurture the child in her lap. Mother Yashoda agreed, and the child was transferred onto the lap of Putana, who was in the garb of a respectable lady. Putana wanted to kill the child by smearing poison on the nipple of her breast, but when everything was complete, the Lord sucked her breast along with her very air of life, and the demon's gigantic body is said to be as long as 6 miles fell down. 6 miles, that's 10k be running. But Lord Krishna did not need to expand himself to the length of the she-demon Putana, although he was quite competent to extend himself more than 6 miles long. In his Vamana incarnation, he posed himself as a dwarf Brahmana, but when he took possession of his land promised by Bali Maharaj, he expanded his footsteps to the top of the universe, extending over thousands and millions of miles. So it's not very difficult for Krishna to perform a miracle by extending his bodily feature. But he had no desire to do it because of his deep filial love for his mother Yashoda. If Yashoda has seen Krishna in her lap extending 6 miles to cope with the she-demon Putana, then the natural filial love of Yashoda would have been hurt, because in that way Yashoda would have come to know that her so-called son Krishna was God himself. And with the knowledge of the Godhead of Krishna, Yashoda Mai would have lost the temper of her love for Krishna as a natural mother. But as far as Lord Krishna is concerned, he is God always, either as a child on the lap of his mother or as the coverer of the universe, Vamanadev. He does not require to become God by undergoing severe penances, although some men think of becoming God in that way. Some men think they're God anyway.
At least God's gift.
By undergoing severe austerities and penances, one cannot become one or equal with God, but one can attain most of the godly qualities. A living being can attain godly qualities to a large extent, but he cannot become God, whereas Krishna, without undergoing any type of penance, is God always, either in the lap of his mother or growing up at any stage of growth.
Growing up at any stage. So at the age of only 3 months, he killed the Shakatasura demon, who had remained hidden behind a cart in the house of Yashodamai. And when he was crawling and was disturbing his mother from doing household affairs, the mother tied him with a grinding pestle. Is that what yours says? The mother tied him with a grinding pestle.
Tied him to a grinding pestle.
Tied him to a grinding pestle. But the naughty child dragged the pestle up to a pair of very high Arjuna trees in the yard of Yashodamai. And when the pestle was struck between the pair of trees, they fell down with a horrible sound. When Yashodamai came to see the happenings, she thought that her child had been saved from the falling trees by the mercy of the Lord, without knowing that the Lord himself, crawling in her yard, had wreaked the havoc. So, that is the way of reciprocation of love affairs between the Lord and his devotees. Yashodamai wanted to have the Lord as her child, and the Lord played exactly like a child in her lap, but at the same time played the part of the Almighty Lord, whenever it was so required. The beauty of such pastimes was that the Lord fulfilled everyone's desire. In the case of felling the gigantic Arjuna trees, the Lord's mission was to deliver the 2 sons of Kuvera, who were condemned to become trees by the curse of Narada, as well as to play like a crawling child in the yard of Yashoda, who took transcendental pleasure in seeing such activities of the Lord in the very yard of her home.
The Lord in any condition is Lord of the universe. He can act as such in any form, gigantic or small, as he likes.
So it's nice as you're reading through the Bhagavatam, especially in the early cantos. We're only in the 2nd canto, but here we get a kind of incidental hearing of the pastimes of Krishna. So you get some real nectar, even though it's not in the 10th canto. But Gopi Puranadam Prabhu, he speaks about this, how throughout the Bhagavatam there is incidental hearing of Krishna's pastimes. So although this section is speaking of the many different incarnations of the Lord, but here we hear about Krishna and his incarnation, of course, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's very enticing for us. So like that. Any thoughts you have?
Yes. It says like Krishna, where does it say? Mother Yashoda would have been hurt because if Krishna revealed that he was God himself.
She wouldn't have been hurt.
No,
Okay. She would have been disturbed.
Then the natural filial love of Yashoda would have been hurt.
Okay, yeah.
If he revealed he was Krishna, okay, in that paragraph, and then in the next paragraph, the one you just read, it says that Yashoda
came to see the happenings.
No, Yashoda wanted to have the Lord as her child, therefore he reciprocated. So this is the point. It's like, people. It's kind of confusion, not a doubt. Because she performed austerities, as we understand, with her husband in previous life and lives to get Krishna as her child. Did she not? Well, Devaki and Vasudev did.
Devaki and Vasudev, yeah, for sure.
I'm sure they did.
Yashoda and Nanda. Anyway,
and then the point, because she said it says so. Yashoda wanted to have the Lord as her child.
Yeah.
So, imagine that. Imagine like we have Landanishwara, and then he comes in as he is, boy, like a young boy. We worship, everyone's seeing him differently. Radharani, whatever they're seeing her, cowherd girl, or like a queen. You know, everyone approaches the deities differently. So why, if we're aspiring for this and you want, like people, like when I'm growing up, a lot of Hindu families, they have little Bal Gopal. It's very common, and they take Krishna as a little baby and they feed him and bathe him, because my objective and my goal and my desire is he's my little boy, you know, and he's my friend, or he's this. So when we achieve that level, when we leave our body and go to God, why taking that knowledge away? Otherwise, I might have just worship any old person if I don't know which one of you is God. The whole point is I worship you because you're God and I want your association.
Yeah, but it's about rasa, isn't it? It's about the it's about the relationship between a mother and the child, and that relationship is very different. It's very familial, familiar, but familial, rather than the relationship of recognizing that he's God. So there's a certain rasa that gets exchanged. Like it says, if Mother Yashoda knew that Krishna was God, she wouldn't have chased him around the yard with a stick. She would have been too afraid. You understand?
But that might have been her rasa.
What do you mean it might have been a rasa?
Someone else, like a Saka or a Gopi, they don't care. They'll mostly throw mud in his face.
What's your point?
See, it don't make sense. It's like, why would she back off if she had the mothering bath?
Yeah, because she also has other bhavs within her, so they also still worship, the Lord. They also worship Narayan, but if she understood that he was Narayan, then the rasa would change.
Right. That's the point. The rasa would.
Yeah, the rasa would change with knowledge of certain circumstances. Then rasas change. So if you really understood who I was, you treat me differently. But because you don't, then because you don't
I have all
realize
respect for you.
because you don't realize I'm God's gift. Then and then there's a certain rasa there. But if you have different relationships with different people, so like that.
Right.
So there is no contradiction and no need for confusion.
I'm not convinced totally. I'm not convinced that I want the knowledge taken away.
Well, that's why you'll stay in the Dasyaras mood then.
No, because I want him to. He's my friend, but God's my friend.
No, but that's
What's
a
wrong with
rasa.
that?
If you want to continue to have the knowledge that you're worshiping God and you want that awe and reverence and majesty, then that's done in awe and reverence. Radharani doesn't think of Krishna as God, does she?
But she must know.
No, he's like God for her in the sense that she loves him so much, but she doesn't think of him as, the Almighty, and Balaram, and like you said, the cowherd boys, they'll like throw mud on him and steal his food and stuff. They're not thinking of him as God. So that's the thing. As soon as they start to think of him as God, there's a different mood that enters. And they're like, oh my God. And that's why when Yashoda looked in his mouth and saw the universe, there was a moment where she was thinking, oh my God, my son is God. And she felt a whole different mood. And then I think Nanda Maharaj, he convinced her that no, he's not God. And they realized, okay, so maybe he's not God. And then they were able to get back into the other mood. But as soon as she thought that he was God, then the mood changed. That's why it's called Yoga Maya. So Yoga Maya we also have to be covered to enter into that pastime. Otherwise, we think of Krishna as God and we treat him with awe and reverence. But to enter into those intimate, higher level rasas, excuse me, with Krishna, then we have to be covered by an ignorance that is spiritual, a spiritual ignorance. that make sense? Still not convinced.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Oh my goodness.
Yes,
Much
I was thinking.
Christmas pudding.
Okay, so next verse, 7:30.
A few. 28.
Mm-hmm.
Not 30, 28. Yeah.
Gotcha. Then also when the cowherd boys and their animals drank the poisoned water of the river Jamuna, and after the Lord in his childhood revived them by his merciful glance, just to purify the water of the river Jamuna, he jumped into it as if playing and chastised the venomous Kaliya snake, which was lurking there. Its tongue emitted waves of poison. Who can perform such Herculean tasks but the Supreme Lord? Text 29. On the very night of the day of the chastisement of the Kaliya snake, when the inhabitants of Brajbhumi were sleeping carefreely, there was a forest fire ablaze due to dry leaves, and it appeared that all of the inhabitants were sure to meet their death. But the Lord, along with Balaram, saved them simply by closing his eyes. Such are the superhuman activities of the Lord. Purport. Although in this verse the Lord's activity has been described as superhuman, it should be noted that the Lord's activities are always superhuman, and that distinguishes him from the ordinary living being. Uprooting a gigantic banyan or Arjuna tree and extinguishing a blazing forest fire simply by closing one's eyes are certainly impossible by any kind of human endeavor. But not only are these activities amazing to hear, but in fact all other activities of the Lord, whatever he may do, are all superhuman, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 4:9. Whoever knows the superhuman activities of the Lord, due to their very transcendental nature, becomes eligible to enter the kingdom of Krishna. And as such, after quitting this present material body, the knower of the transcendental activities of the Lord goes back home, back to Godhead.
Text 30. When the cowherd woman, Krishna's foster mother Yashoda, it's interesting, foster mother,
yeah.
was trying to tie the hands of her son with ropes, she found the rope to be always insufficient in length. And when she finally gave up, Lord Krishna by and by opened his mouth, wherein the mother found all the universes situated. Seeing this, she was doubtful in her mind, but she was convinced in a different manner of the mystic nature of her son. Purport. One day, Lord Krishna, as the naughty child, disturbed his mother Yashoda, and she began to tie up the child with ropes just to punish him. But no matter how much rope she used, she found it always insufficient. Thus she became fatigued. But in the meantime, the Lord opened his mouth, and the affectionate mother saw within the mouth of her son all the universes situated together. The mother was astonished, but out of her deep affection for Krishna, she thought that the Almighty Godhead Narayan had kindly looked after her son just to protect him from all the continuous calamities happening to him. Because of her deep affection for Krishna, she could never think that her very son was Narayan, the personality of Godhead himself. That is the action of Yoga Maya, the internal potency of the Supreme Lord, which acts to perfect all the pastimes of the Lord with his different types of devotees. Who could play such wonders without being God?
Interesting. Text 31. Lord Krishna saved his foster father. Krishna, the foster kid, foster child. Nanda Maharaj, from the fear of the demigod Varuna, and released the cowherd boys from the caves of the mountain, for they were placed there by the son of Maya. Also to the inhabitants of Vrindavan, who were busy working during daytime and sleeping soundly at night because of their hard labor in the day, Lord Krishna awarded promotion to the highest planet in the spiritual sky. All these acts are transcendental and certainly prove without any doubt his godhood. So So it seems at the end, the Brajbasis, they would work hard. They were hard working. So we may think, go back to the spiritual world, and it's going to be easy. But it looks like it's going to be hard work there too.
Well, that's if you're one of the workers.
There you go. Nanda Maharaj, the foster father of Lord Krishna, went to take his bath in the river Jamuna in the dead of night, mistakenly thinking that the night was already over. Thus, the demigod Varuna took him to the Varuna planet just to have a look at the personality of Godhead Lord Krishna, who appeared there to release his father. Actually, but there was no arrest of Nanda Maharaj by Varun, but because the inhabitants of Vrindavan were always engaged in thinking of Krishna and constant meditation on the personality of Godhead in a particular form of samadhi or trance of bhakti yoga. They had no fear of the miseries of material existence. And the Bhagavad Gita is confirmed that to be in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead by full surrender and transcendental love frees one from the miseries inflicted by the laws of material nature. Here it is clearly mentioned that the inhabitants of Vrindavan were extensively busy in the hard work of their day's labor. In the hard labor of their day's work. And due to the day's hard labor, they were engaged in sound sleep at night. So practically they had very little time to devote to meditation or to the other paraphernalia of spiritual activities. Spiritual activities only. Everything done by them was spiritualized because everything was dovetailed in their relationship with Lord Krishna. The central point of activities was Krishna, and as such, the so-called activities in the material world were saturated with spiritual potency. That is the advantage of the way of Bhakti Yoga. One should discharge one's duty on Lord Krishna's behalf, and all one's actions will be saturated with Krishna thought, the highest pattern of trance and spiritual realization. That's nice.
Need more?
What do you think?
One more.
One more.
Text 32. When the cowherd men of Vrindavan, under instruction of Krishna, stopped offering sacrifice to the heavenly king, Indra, the whole tract of land known as Vraj, was threatened with being washed away by constant heavy rains for 7 days. Lord Krishna, out of his causeless mercy upon the inhabitants of Vraj, held up the hill known as Govardhan with one hand only. Although he was only 7 years old, he did this to protect the animals from the onslaught of water. Purport. Children play with an umbrella generally known as a frog's umbrella, and Lord Krishna, when he was only 7 years old, could snatch the great hill known as the Govardhan Parvata at Vrindavan and hold it for 7 days continuously with one hand, just to protect the animals and the inhabitants of Vrindavan from the wrath of India. Oh, Indra.
The wrath of India.
The heavenly king, who had been denied sacrificial offerings by the inhabitants of Brajabhumi.
Factually, there is no need of offering sacrifices to the demigods for their services if one is engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord. Sacrifices recommended in the Vedic literature for satisfaction of the demigods are a sort of inducement to the sacrificers to realize the existence of higher authorities. The demigods are engaged by the Lord as controlling deities of material affairs. And according to the Bhagavad Gita, when a demigod is worshipped, the process is accepted as the indirect method for worshipping the Supreme Lord. But when the Supreme Lord is worshipped directly, there is no need of worshipping the demigods or offering them sacrifices as recommended in particular circumstances. Lord Krishna therefore advised the inhabitants of Brajbhumi not to offer any sacrifices to the heavenly king Indra. But Indra, not knowing Lord Krishna in Brajbhumi, was angry at the inhabitants of Brajbhumi and tried to avenge the offense. But, competent as the Lord was, he saved the inhabitants and animals of Braj Bhumi by his personal energy and proved definitely that anyone directly engaged as a devotee of the Supreme Lord need not satisfy any other demigods, however great, even to the level of Brahma or Shiva. This incident definitely proved without a doubt that Lord Krishna is the personality of Godhead, and that he was so in all circumstances, as a child on the lap of his mother, as a boy of 7 years old, and as an old man of 125 years of age. In either case, he was never on the level of the ordinary man, and even in his advanced age he appeared a young boy 16 years old. These are the particular features of the transcendental body of the Lord. Jai, very nice. Okay. All right, so we'll finish there. Thank you all very much for tuning in, and we hope that you're able to relish these readings of the Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam as we continue. Quite a few devotees have mentioned how they appreciate it, so we appreciate the fact that you appreciate. We're simply trying to inspire ourselves to read Srila Prabhupada's books and become Krishna conscious, and in the process also trying to share that with others so that we all can try to dive deeper into Srila Prabhupada's books and become more Krishna conscious. Okay, thank you all very much. Have a wonderful afternoon. Of course, today for us is Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur's disappearance day. So what a wonderful day to honor our for us, our great-grandfather, spiritual master, Acharya, His Holiness Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, by hearing and chanting and reflecting and remembering him and the amazing efforts that he made to spread Krishna consciousness and establish the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and empowering Srila Prabhupada to bring it to the West to save all of us. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.